In My Father's House is a book about a family that loves crime. Now, that might seem crazy to say, and not everyone will understand why I say it that way. But In My Father's House talks about a family, specifically the Bogle family, who for many generations have taught their children and other relatives to indulge and enjoy this criminal behavior. In the book, I read how children often accompany their parents to commit these behaviors and they feel a sense of connection within each other because they're committing these acts together. The Bogle family does not care about upholding the law, they are not in fear of the consequences, and they do not care to break the law. For them, breaking the law is a way of survival and a normal for them. To them, they are simply living and they are trying their best to stay alive, although indulging in behaviors that are not okay. The Bogle family reflects crime because it shows how crime begins to become attractive to an individual. For example, the Bogle family, they typically teach each other and they teach their children to be a part of these crimes. In the book, it states how one of the fathers, Rooster, would bring his children and make them participate in these crimes. The wife would also tag along and she would be driving the getaway car and be on the lookout while inside were her children and her husband stealing resources and food. Tracy and Bobby were also talked to and they stated how they enjoyed these actions because they felt as if they were bonding with their family. To them, robbery and burglary was a sense of showing respect to their family and gaining a badge of honor. They didn't see what was wrong. To them, it was all normal. And it wasn't until they grew older where they saw a problem. Another part for the reflection of crime is the environment. To them, their environment was normal, but from an outside perspective, you can tell how living in poverty affected them. They were a poor family, so of course they used stealing to gain things they couldn't afford, and they were also not very educated. They dropped out of school. Like I said, they were always in and out of jail, so they never received a proper education. Now, in the reflection of law, it states in the book an example of Narcissa who had a partner that she had multiple children with. She was not legally married to him as because he had already been priorly married to another woman. Well, he ended up passing away, and by law, the government was supposed to compensate Narcissa with money. However, throughout time, the law changed. Now, I think this is a good example because it shows the modification and how laws change and different rules are added. So, in this scenario, Narcissa is trying to get the money, but the new law states that if the woman is not upholding her husband's memory, then she will not be compensated. So, Narcissa had actually been intimate with another man a few weeks after his death, after her main partner's death. She had been intimate with another man and she was actually pregnant. So they did not want to grant her any compensation because they felt as if she was not upholding his memory and she was actually disgracing his memory. Another example for law and the development by the Bogle family is their sense of authority. To them, authority was not the outside world like it is to us. For us, we have police officers, we have government, we have rules to follow that nobody can escape from. However, to them, the Bogle family felt as if their father was their authoritative figure. Even though he wasn't emotionally involved with them, they still had that respect towards him to follow him and believe in him. Their father had implemented a specific mindset which made them believe that what he was saying was good and beneficial towards them, which was not the case. For many years and for a lot of time, their father made stealing and criminal behavior their norm, which was not actually true. With time, after being in jail for many, many years, the children began to see that and began to change. And once they were out, they wanted to be better for themselves, and they actually wanted to try harder because they realized that they could not go on like this. However, Brewster, the father, never wanted to change. He always stuck to his criminal ways, and even after being released, he did not do better, did not look for employment, and he kept on living through scams and robbery. The Bogle family also, with justice and how they reflect that development, Tony was actually a prime victim of justice, both positive and negative. When I say that, I mean that he experienced both sides of justice and what it meant. Tony is a good example because he shows how justice changes over time and how the government wanted to change to create, instead of creating punishment, they wanted to include a lesson to be learned. So Tony was sent to a mental institute hospital where he was given the chance to be better and actually try to change his behavior. Tony did not change his behavior. He did not believe in growing. He actually worsened his act, which got him sent to an actual correction facility. However, with time, his behavior got so bad they had to send him back to the mental institute. In these mental institutes that were created to help reform, he was diagnosed with mental issues, which from an outside perspective is kind of obvious that he would be struggling with that. Since they knew he was going through mental issues, they were a little more lenient on giving him that chance to be better and change, which he did not appreciate and he did not try to work towards. This is a good connection to the stuff I learned about just in class about criminal justice, because it shows the transformation with time and over time, how different eras and different time stamps affect someone. Because let's say for a different amount of time back in the day, what would be a punishment would not be okay now, or like at a different time. It's just a good connection of showing how crime, law, and justice really do modify themselves in a way, because we are constantly growing, and the reason these rules are implemented is because certain things happen that lead to the change, and there's always someone affected, there's someone who gains from these changes, which is good to see because it helps society as a whole. Now, the book actually reminded me a lot about a documentary about the White family. A quick summary about this documentary, not to take up too much time, but the documentary focuses on this family who is also a big fan of crime. They are also very involved in that life. It shows more of like the drug point of view on things. They are very used to doing cocaine and marijuana, and they focus on that. It shows clips of them committing like these acts, but this family is also doesn't have a lot of values when it comes to these type of things. They are just focused on being better, what they believe is better in their own family, not what the world actually says is better. Now, the two connections I found would be the way they support themselves through family. I feel like both of these families help within themselves, not each other, but within themselves, they're so used to each other that they are not correcting their behavior of one another. They are actually just supporting each other, whether it's true or not. They are just being comfortable in that warm, happy little bubble, and they are not trying to change or even help their own children. The second connection that I found is their lack of upholding the law. They are just families who do not care about being good and following in good footsteps. They do not care about punishment. Clearly, they do not care and are not in fear of it either. I felt like those are two big, strong connections. And it's kind of crazy how they both have similar mindsets when it comes to crime and punishment. law, justice, all of that, because it is sort of like in the book it says you can in the sorry, in the book it states how you can sort of anticipate like which families are going to be more linked to crime, and seeing the connection between the two, I do believe that is true. After reading this book, I felt like I understood where this family comes from. I don't want to say I relate fully, but I also grew up in an environment of poverty. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to have to work really hard, or not work hard in their sense, but like do certain, how can I say this? Like not fully be as and have it as easier as others. Like not having it as easy as others. I can relate to that. So I tried to be understanding with what they were going through. However, I feel like I was rich in other ways. I had a strong support system by my family. I had two amazing parents, and they led me in the right direction. They always taught me right from wrong. So seeing that, I definitely felt like I understood a little better, maybe as someone who hasn't struggled through poverty or anything like that. As a criminal justice student, I feel like even more I can put myself in their shoes, because what I study is very similar to their lives, and I study the behaviors of how someone could be tempted to focus on crime or even lean more towards crime. So I feel like my field of knowledge definitely expanded after this book, because it showed me the mental side of things, because within psychology it just showed me more about not only committing the crime, but what leads up and like what pushes someone to commit these crimes basically. And in this situation, I do feel like it was more because of family.